Hi, I'm Natalie Brooks. 3 years ago, my sister Vanessa stood in our parents' kitchen during Thanksgiving dinner and told everyone I was killing myself with my ridiculous eating habits. My father nodded. My mother said I was being selfish and embarrassing the family. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply walked away from that table and never went back. But last month, my phone lit up with 17 missed calls from them. All in one morning. They saw the billboards. They saw the Nike campaign. They saw the $12 million contract announcement. Suddenly, the daughter they said was delusional became the daughter they wanted to celebrate. Funny how that works. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The dining room smelled like roasted turkey and tension. I'd driven 3 hours from Portland to Beaverton for this dinner, and I was already regretting it 20 minutes in. My sister Vanessa sat across from me wearing a fitted activewear set that probably cost more than my rent, her phone propped against a wine bottle as she filmed herself cutting into sweet potatoes. She was in the middle of explaining her latest fitness collab to the camera when I reached for the Tupperware container I'd brought. The sound of the plastic lid popping open cut through her monologue like a record scratch. She stopped mid-sentence. My mother, Diane, glanced over from the head of the table where she'd been nodding along to whatever Vanessa was saying. My father, Richard, lowered his fork. Even Aunt Carol, who'd been halfway through her third glass of Chardonnay, paused to stare. Inside my container was what I'd prepared that morning. Roasted chickpeas, steamed broccoli, quinoa, and a tahini dressing I'd made from scratch. It looked good to me. Colorful. Nourishing. Exactly what I'd planned. But the way they looked at it, you'd think I'd opened a container of live insects. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. What is that supposed to be? Her voice had that edge to it, the one she used when she wanted everyone to know she was about to say something cutting but planned to frame it as concern. I glanced up briefly, then back down at my food. It's my dinner. That's all I said. I didn't owe her an explanation. I'd learned that months ago. But silence wasn't enough for her. You brought your own food. To Thanksgiving. She let the words hang there like an accusation. My mother shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. My father set his fork down entirely, leaning back with his arms folded in a mirror of Vanessa's posture. I swallowed, feeling the familiar tightness in my chest that came whenever I was in this house. I have specific goals right now. This helps me stay on track. My voice came out quieter than I wanted, but steady. Vanessa let out a laugh that wasn't really a laugh. It was sharp and performative, designed for an audience. Goals. Right. She looked at our parents, then at Aunt Carol, like she was gathering witnesses. You've been on this weird diet for what, 6 months now? And you've lost maybe 30 pounds? She tilted her head, fake sympathy dripping from every word. That's not sustainable, Natalie. You're going to hurt yourself. I felt my jaw tighten. 37 pounds, actually. And I feel better than I have in years. That was true. My knees didn't ache when I walked anymore. I could climb a flight of stairs without losing my breath. I'd started running, really running, for the first time since high school. But none of that mattered here. My mother finally spoke, her tone gentle but somehow worse than Vanessa's directness. Sweetheart, we're just worried. You're being so extreme. All this meal prepping and weighing your food, it's obsessive. You're missing out on life. She gestured to the table laden with mashed potatoes, stuffing, gravy, rolls, 3 kinds of pie. This is family. This is what matters. I looked down at my container again. The chickpeas I'd roasted with cumin and smoked paprika. The broccoli I'd steamed perfectly so it still had a bit of crunch. The quinoa I'd cooked in vegetable broth for extra flavor. I'd spent 2 hours preparing this meal because it mattered to me. Because I mattered to me. But sitting here, surrounded by people who were supposed to love me, I felt like I was on trial for the crime of caring about my own body. Richard, my father, cleared his throat. He always did that before he said something he thought was profound. Natalie, your mother's right. You've always had a tendency to take things too far. Remember that time you tried to learn guitar and you practiced until your fingers bled? Or when you got obsessed with that pottery class? You do this. You latch onto something and you go overboard. I blinked at him. Those things made me happy. I was good at them. I stopped because you kept telling me I was wasting my time. The words came out before I could stop them, and I immediately regretted the honesty. His face hardened. That's not fair. We encouraged you to have hobbies. We just didn't want you to lose sight of what's realistic. Vanessa jumped back in, sensing blood in the water. And that's what this is, Nat. It's not realistic. You're eating like a rabbit. You're running at 5 in the morning. You're turning down every social event because you're afraid of breaking your precious routine. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to something that almost sounded like kindness but wasn't. You're isolating yourself. And for what? So you can lose a little weight? You're still going to be you. The room went silent after that. Even Aunt Carol looked uncomfortable. I stared at my sister, really looked at her, and something clicked into place that I'd been avoiding for months. She wasn't worried about me. She was bothered by me. Bothered that I'd found something that worked when her way hadn't worked for me. Bothered that I wasn't asking her for advice or following her influencer meal plans or buying the supplements she promoted on her page. I closed my container slowly. The click of the lid felt final. I stood up, chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Where are you going? My mother asked, her voice rising slightly. We haven't even had dessert yet. I picked up my keys from the sideboard where I'd left them. I'm going home. My voice was calm now, almost eerily so. Vanessa scoffed. Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic. We're having a conversation. No, I said, looking directly at her. You're having a performance. I'm leaving. My father stood now too, his face reddening. Natalie Marie Brooks, you sit back down. We are your family. You don't just walk out. I turned to face him fully. I've spent 29 years listening to all of you tell me what I should be, how I should look, what I should want. And every single time I tried something that worked for me, you made me feel like I was wrong for trying. Diane reached out like she was going to grab my arm, but I stepped back. Honey, that's not true. We've always supported you. I shook my head. You've supported the version of me that made you comfortable. The second I started changing in a way you didn't control, it became a problem. Vanessa stood now too, her phone still recording everything. This is insane. You're acting insane. I looked at her one last time. I hope your followers enjoy the content. Then I walked out. The cold November air hit me as I stepped onto the porch. I could hear raised voices inside, my mother saying something about me being too sensitive, my father saying I'd always been stubborn. I didn't wait to hear the rest. I got in my car, a 12-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door and a check engine light that flickered on and off depending on its mood, and I drove. I didn't cry. Not right away. I'd expected the criticism. I'd prepared myself for the comments about my food, my routine, my choices. What I hadn't prepared for was the totality of their dismissal. The way they looked at my effort like it was something pitiable. Like I was a child playing dress-up instead of an adult making conscious decisions about her own health. Halfway back to Portland, I pulled into a rest stop. It was nearly empty, just a couple of semi-trucks idling in the parking lot and a sedan with out-of-state plates. I sat there with the engine running, heat blasting, and I pulled out my phone. No messages. No calls. Not even a half-hearted text asking if I'd made it home safe. I opened my photos and scrolled back to June, 6 months earlier, to the day I'd started this journey. The photo was brutal in its honesty. Me, standing in my bathroom in an old sports bra and shorts, 387 pounds of exhaustion and defeat staring back at the camera. I'd taken it the morning after I'd gotten winded walking to my mailbox. The morning I'd realized that at 31 years old, I was barely living. I wasn't hiking. I wasn't dancing. I wasn't doing any of the things I'd loved as a kid because my body had become a prison I'd locked myself into with every excuse and every moment I'd believed people who said I was fine just the way I was. But I wasn't fine. And the people who said I was fine weren't the ones who had to live in my body. They weren't the ones who couldn't tie their shoes without losing their breath. They weren't the ones who avoided mirrors and photos and anything that forced them to confront what they'd become. I looked at that photo for a long time, sitting in that rest stop parking lot, and something hardened inside me. A resolve that had been forming for months finally crystallized into something unbreakable. I wasn't going back. Not to that house. Not to those dinners. Not to the version of myself they wanted me to stay. I turned my car back on and continued driving, but I didn't go home to my apartment in Portland. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Instead, I took the exit toward downtown and pulled into the parking lot of a budget inn on Burnside. The neon sign flickered, half the letters burned out so it read "Be'd get in." It was the kind of place where the clerk didn't ask questions and the rooms were paid by the night. $43. The clerk was a middle-aged man with tired eyes and a name tag that said Dennis. He slid a key across the counter, the old-fashioned kind attached to a plastic diamond with the room number written in faded marker. Room 12. Ice machine's broken but the vending machine works. He went back to his magazine before I'd even picked up the key. The room smelled like industrial cleaner trying and failing to mask years of cigarette smoke. The bedspread was a faded floral pattern that might have been cheerful in 1987. There was a painting bolted to the wall, a generic landscape of mountains that existed nowhere specific. I dropped my bag on the chair by the window and sat on the edge of the bed. It didn't creak like I expected. It just sort of sighed under my weight. I still didn't cry. I sat there in the dim light from the lamp on the nightstand and I pulled out the Tupperware container I'd never opened at dinner. The food was cold now, but I ate it anyway. Every bite. Because it was mine. Because I'd made it for myself. Because it represented something that had nothing to do with anyone else's opinion. When I finished, I lay back on the bed and stared at the water-stained ceiling. There was a mark up there that looked like a tree if you tilted your head to the left. Or maybe a crack spreading slowly across plaster. I thought about the look on Vanessa's face when I'd stood up. The shock of it. Like she'd never considered that I might actually leave. My phone buzzed once. I picked it up, expecting maybe, possibly, a message asking if I was okay. It was a notification from Instagram. Vanessa had posted a photo from dinner. The table full of food, her smiling next to our parents, the caption reading, "Grateful for family traditions and the people who show up." 3 heart emojis. 200 likes already. I turned off my phone and set it face down on the nightstand. The silence in the room was complete except for the distant sound of traffic on Burnside and someone's television through the wall playing what sounded like a game show. I reached into my bag and pulled out the one thing I'd grabbed on my way out of my apartment that morning, before I'd driven to Beaverton. It was a stopwatch. Old, silver, scratched from years of use. Coach Edwin Parker had given it to me in high school during my sophomore year when I'd been on the track team. Not because I was fast. I wasn't. I was always the slowest on the relay team, always finishing last in practice runs. But Coach Parker had seen something in me that I'd forgotten I had. Persistence. "You know what I like about you, Brooks?" He'd said one afternoon after everyone else had gone home and I was still trying to complete a mile without stopping. "You don't quit. You get mad, you get frustrated, but you keep moving forward. That's rarer than talent." He'd handed me the stopwatch. Time yourself. Not to beat anyone else. Just to beat yesterday. I'd kept that stopwatch for 14 years, through 3 apartments and countless moments when I'd thought about throwing it away because it reminded me of a version of myself I thought I'd lost. I clicked it once. The second hand started moving. Then I stopped it. Reset it. The red digital numbers blinked back to 0. I could start again. I could always start again. I thought about tomorrow. About going back to my apartment. About the meal prep containers in my fridge for the rest of the week. About the 5 a.m. alarm I'd set for my morning run through Willow Creek Park. About the gym membership I'd bought 3 months ago at the 24/7 fitness hub that I'd been using 6 days a week. About the journal where I tracked my meals and my moods and the small victories that no one else seemed to notice or care about. 37 pounds lost. 50 more to go before I hit my first major goal. Then 50 more after that. Then another 100 beyond that. The numbers felt impossible when I said them out loud, which is why I'd stopped saying them out loud to anyone. But lying there in that motel room, staring at that water stain that looked like a tree or a crack or maybe just time leaving its mark on everything it touched, the numbers felt possible. Not easy. Not quick. But possible. I thought about Coach Parker. He died 4 years ago, heart attack at 62. I'd gone to the funeral. Vanessa hadn't. She'd had a sponsored post to film that day for a supplement company. I'd stood in the back of the church and listened to his wife talk about how he believed everyone had something in them worth fighting for, even when they couldn't see it themselves. Especially then. The stopwatch felt heavy in my hand. Heavier than it should for something so small. I set it on the nightstand next to my phone and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, I would go home. I would meal prep for the week. I would go to the gym. I would run my 3 miles even though my body would protest the first half mile like it always did. I would weigh my food and track my calories and ignore the voice in my head that sounded suspiciously like Vanessa telling me I was being obsessive. Because that voice was wrong. There was a difference between obsession and dedication. There was a difference between extreme and committed. And I was done letting people who'd never tried to change themselves tell me how to do it. The last thought I had before falling asleep was about the photo on my phone. The one from 6 months ago. That woman in the mirror who couldn't walk to her mailbox without stopping to catch her breath. She deserved better than what I'd given her for 31 years. She deserved someone who would fight for her instead of apologizing for her existence. Starting tomorrow, that's exactly what she was going to get. I woke up before my alarm, which never happened. The room was still dark, the only light coming from the gap under the door where the hallway fluorescents hummed their constant electric song. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then it all came back. The dinner. The container of food. Vanessa's voice saying you're still going to be you like it was a life sentence. My phone showed 5:43 a.m. I had 17 minutes before my alarm would go off. I turned it off and sat up. My back ached from the motel mattress, but it was a different kind of ache than usual. Not the persistent pain of carrying too much weight for too long. Just the temporary discomfort of an unfamiliar bed. I could work with temporary. I changed into my running clothes, the same ones I'd packed yesterday morning in what felt like another lifetime. Black leggings that I'd bought 2 sizes smaller than I used to wear. A gray moisture-wicking shirt. The running shoes I'd saved up for, proper ones from a specialty store where they'd analyzed my gait and arch support and told me I'd been wearing the wrong size my entire life. Size 11 wide. I used to be embarrassed buying shoes that size. Now I just appreciated that they fit. The motel had a small bathroom with a mirror that had seen better decades. I looked at myself in it. Really looked. Not with the critical eye I'd used for years, cataloging every flaw and failure. Just observing. My face was thinner than it had been 6 months ago. Not dramatically. I wasn't unrecognizable. But there were cheekbones emerging that I'd forgotten I had. My double chin was less pronounced. The puffiness around my eyes had reduced. These weren't things other people noticed. But I noticed. Every small change was a promise kept to myself. I left the key on the nightstand with $10 for housekeeping and walked out into the gray pre-dawn Portland morning. The air was cold and damp, that particular Pacific Northwest chill that gets into your bones if you let it. I didn't let it. I started walking toward Willow Creek Park, about 1.5 miles from the motel. I could have driven, but I wanted to move. Needed to move. Movement had become my meditation, the thing that cleared my head when everything else felt chaotic. The park was nearly empty at this hour. Just a few other early risers. A man walking 3 small dogs. A woman doing Tai Chi near the community garden. An older couple power walking in matching windbreakers. None of them looked at me twice. I was just another person starting their day. Not the fat girl trying to exercise. Not the woman who should be doing something else. Just someone moving through the world with purpose. I stretched near the trailhead, going through the routine I'd learned from YouTube videos and trial and error. Hamstrings. Quads. Hip flexors. Calves. Everything got tight when you carried extra weight for years. Everything protested when you asked it to do more. But everything also adapted if you were patient and consistent. That's what the fitness influencers never talked about in their transformation posts. The boring, unglamorous truth that change happened in tiny increments over long periods of time. That most days you didn't feel different at all. That motivation was fleeting but discipline was reliable. I clicked the stopwatch. Started running. My pace was slow, would always be slow by most people's standards. 12-minute miles on a good day. 13 or 14 when my body was tired. But it was faster than not moving at all. Faster than the version of me who'd stood in her bathroom 6 months ago convinced she'd never be able to run again. The first half-mile was always the hardest. My lungs burned. My legs felt heavy. Every part of me wanted to slow to a walk. But I knew from experience that if I pushed through, if I let my body warm up and find its rhythm, it got easier. Not easy. Easier. There was a difference. By mile 2, I'd found that rhythm. My breathing steadied. My stride lengthened slightly. The park path wound through Douglas firs and red alders, past the duck pond where I could hear Canada geese honking their morning conversations, along the creek that gave the park its name. This had become my sanctuary. The place where I proved to myself every single morning that I was capable of more than everyone, including myself, had believed. Mile 3 approached faster than I expected. I checked my time. 38 minutes. Not a personal record, but solid considering yesterday's emotional marathon. I slowed to a walk for my cooldown, hands on my hips, breathing hard but not gasping. 6 months ago, walking 3 miles would have taken me over an hour and left me exhausted for the rest of the day. Now I'd run it and would still go to the gym later. Progress wasn't always visible in photos or numbers on a scale. Sometimes it was just the feeling of your own capability expanding. I walked back toward where I'd parked my car at the motel, taking the long route through a residential neighborhood where houses were starting to show signs of life. Lights in kitchens. The blue glow of televisions. One woman watering plants on her porch waved at me. I waved back. These small human moments that had nothing to do with my weight or my journey felt more meaningful than they should. Like I was participating in normal life instead of watching it from the outside. When I got back to the motel parking lot, I sat in my car for a moment before starting the engine. My phone, which I'd left in the cup holder, showed 3 notifications. My heart did a stupid hopeful thing before I checked them. All 3 were from my meal tracking app reminding me to log my breakfast. None from my family. I don't know why I expected anything different. I drove back to my apartment in Northeast Portland, a studio on the 3rd floor of a building that had been nice in the 70s. The elevator worked half the time. Today wasn't one of those times. I took the stairs, which 6 months ago would have been a whole ordeal. Now it was just part of the routine. Inside, my apartment looked exactly as I'd left it yesterday morning. Small but organized. My meal prep containers lined up in the fridge. My foam roller and resistance bands in the corner. My food scale on the counter next to the coffee maker. This was my space. No one here to comment on my portions or question my choices. No one to perform for or explain myself to. Just me and the life I was methodically, intentionally building. I made breakfast. Scrambled eggs with spinach and mushrooms. A slice of whole grain toast. Black coffee. I weighed everything, logged it in my app, and ate slowly while reading an article on my phone about sustainable weight loss. The article said most people who lose significant amounts of weight gain it back within 5 years. The statistics were depressing. But buried in the middle was a paragraph about the small percentage who kept it off. What they had in common wasn't a specific diet or exercise program. It was a fundamental shift in identity. They stopped seeing themselves as people who were temporarily losing weight and started seeing themselves as people who valued health. The behavior followed the identity shift, not the other way around. I read that paragraph 3 times. That's what was happening to me, I realized. I wasn't on a diet. I was becoming a different person. Someone who meal prepped on Sundays because she wanted to set herself up for success. Someone who went to bed early on Friday nights so she could run Saturday mornings. Someone who tracked her food not out of obsession but out of awareness. Someone who chose long-term well-being over short-term comfort. Vanessa couldn't see that because she'd built her entire identity and income around fitness being something you performed for an audience. My father couldn't see it because he'd given up on himself years ago and needed me to give up too so he didn't have to face his own choices. My mother couldn't see it because she'd spent decades defining love as food and my rejection of certain foods felt like rejection of her. But Coach Parker would have seen it. He would have clicked that stopwatch and told me to beat yesterday. And suddenly, sitting there in my small apartment eating my measured breakfast, I missed him with an intensity that surprised me. Not just missed him. Needed him. Needed someone who believed in the long game. Who understood that transformation wasn't a 30-day challenge or a 12-week program but a fundamental rewiring of everything you'd believed about yourself. I finished my breakfast and washed the dishes. Opened my laptop. I had a job, nothing glamorous. I did data entry for a medical billing company, fully remote, which meant I could structure my days around my training. That's how I'd started thinking about it. Training. Not dieting. Not trying to lose weight. Training for a version of my life where my body did what I asked it to do. Where I had energy and strength and mobility. Where I could hike and travel and exist in the world without constantly calculating whether I'd fit in the seat or the booth or the space. I worked through the morning, fingers moving across the keyboard in the rhythmic pattern I'd perfected over 3 years in this job. It paid enough to cover my basic expenses with a little left over. Not enough for emergencies or vacations or the kind of life my sister posted about on Instagram. But enough for the gym membership and the good running shoes and the groceries that made up my meal prep. Enough for the life I was building one small choice at a time. At noon, I closed my laptop and changed into my gym clothes. The 24/7 fitness hub was a 10-minute drive, a no-frills place with fluorescent lighting and equipment that was functional if not fancy. No juice bar. No spa facilities. Just weights and machines and people who came to work. That's why I liked it. No one was there to be seen. We were all there to do the thing. Keith was at the front desk when I walked in. He was one of the trainers, mid-40s, former college wrestler who'd gotten into fitness coaching after his competitive days ended. He'd helped me figure out a strength training routine when I'd first joined, never once making me feel like I didn't belong in the weight section. "Hey Natalie. Good run this morning?" He always asked. Somehow he knew my schedule better than I did. 3 miles at Willow Creek. Not my fastest but consistent. He nodded approvingly. Consistent is what builds the foundation. You doing upper body today? Chest and back. He pulled up something on the computer screen. Cool. Smith machine is open if you need it for bench press. Let me know if you want a spot. I wouldn't. I'd learned how to ask for help when I needed it, but I'd also learned the satisfaction of doing things independently. Of knowing my own strength and limitations. Of not needing someone to rescue me every time something got hard. The gym was moderately crowded for a Friday afternoon. A mix of retirees, remote workers on lunch breaks, and people who worked night shifts. I claimed a bench and started my warm-up with light dumbbells. 5 pounds each hand, arm circles and shoulder presses just to get blood flowing. A woman on the mat nearby was doing yoga stretches. 2 guys were spotting each other on squats. A man older than my father was on the rowing machine, steady rhythmic pulls. We were all just people trying to take care of ourselves in whatever way made sense to us. 45 minutes later, I'd completed my workout. Chest press. Rows. Lat pull-downs. Push-ups on my knees because I couldn't do full ones yet, but I could do more than I could last month. Everything was incremental. Everything was progress even when it didn't feel like it. I finished with a 10-minute cool-down walk on the treadmill and some stretching. My shirt was soaked with sweat. My muscles felt worked, that good kind of tired that came from effort, not exhaustion. In the locker room, I caught my reflection in the full-length mirror. I usually avoided mirrors. Too many years of hating what I saw. But today, I stopped and looked. Really looked. At my arms, which had visible muscle definition now. At my legs, which were stronger than they'd ever been. At my core, which was smaller than 6 months ago but still had a long way to go. The number on the scale had gone from 387 to 350. 37 pounds. Vanessa had said that like it was nothing. Like it didn't represent hundreds of early mornings and thousands of choices and a complete restructuring of my entire life. But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. It was proof that I could set a goal and move toward it even when everyone around me said I was being ridiculous or extreme or obsessive. It was evidence that I was capable of change, which meant I was capable of anything if I wanted it badly enough and was willing to work for it long enough. I drove home in the late afternoon light feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not happiness exactly. Something steadier than that. Contentment, maybe. Or just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd done what I said I would do. That I'd shown up for myself even after a day that would have given me every excuse to quit. My phone rang as I was pulling into my parking spot. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me swipe to accept. Hello? Is this Natalie Brooks? A woman's voice, professional but warm. Yes, who's calling? My name is Tanya Richardson. I'm a nutritionist at the Riverside Wellness Center. A friend of yours, Dr. Raymond Hayes, suggested I reach out to you. He thought you might be interested in some of the programs we're developing. I shifted the car into park but left the engine running. Dr. Hayes was the physician I'd seen 4 months ago for a regular checkup. He'd been the first medical professional in my life who hadn't immediately jumped to judging my weight but instead had asked questions about my lifestyle, my goals, my approach. When I'd explained my plant-based whole foods focus and intermittent fasting schedule, he'd actually listened instead of dismissing it. I'd told him about the resistance I was facing from my family. He'd said something I'd written in my journal that night. The people who have never done the work will always criticize how you do the work. I remember Dr. Hayes. What kind of programs? We're launching a long-term wellness study focused on sustainable lifestyle changes for significant weight loss. We're looking for participants who are already showing commitment and results. Dr. Hayes thought you'd be an excellent candidate. It's completely voluntary, but we offer nutritional counseling, fitness consultations, and regular medical monitoring. All at no cost in exchange for letting us document your journey for research purposes. Something in my chest tightened. Not anxiety. Something else. Possibility. I'm interested. Tell me more. We talked for 20 minutes. She explained the program structure, the support system, the fact that they were specifically looking for people who were doing things differently from mainstream diet culture. People who were in it for the long haul, not the quick fix. People who understood that health was a practice, not a destination. By the time we hung up, I had an appointment scheduled for next week to come in for an initial consultation and assessment. I sat in my car after the call ended, engine still running, heat blasting. This was what happened when you kept going even when no one believed in you. Doors opened. Not because you were lucky. Because you'd positioned yourself to walk through them when they appeared. I thought about yesterday's Thanksgiving dinner. About Vanessa's certainty that I was harming myself. About my mother's insistence that I was missing out on life. About my father's conviction that I was being unrealistic. They weren't here for this phone call. They wouldn't be there for the consultation next week. They wouldn't be part of any of the milestones ahead. And that was okay. It had to be okay. Because I couldn't wait for their approval to live my life. I'd already wasted too many years doing exactly that. I finally turned off the car and went inside. Made my dinner, another pre-prepped meal from the fridge. Baked tofu with roasted vegetables and brown rice. Ate it slowly while watching a documentary about ultramarathoners. Not because I had any intention of running an ultramarathon. But because I liked watching people do things that seemed impossible until they did them. After dinner, I pulled out my journal, a simple composition notebook where I'd been tracking more than just food and exercise. I wrote about my thoughts, my struggles, the small victories that no one else saw. Today's entry was longer than usual. I wrote about the dinner. About the motel room. About the run this morning and the gym session this afternoon. About Tanya's phone call and the program at Riverside Wellness Center. About the feeling I'd had looking in the mirror and seeing someone I was starting to recognize and maybe even like. I ended with something Coach Parker used to say. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. I'd started 6 months ago. I wasn't great yet. But I was so much further along than the person who'd taken that bathroom photo back in June. And tomorrow, I'd be a little further still. That was all that mattered. Not Vanessa's approval. Not my parents' understanding. Just the steady, unglamorous, absolutely essential work of showing up for myself day after day after day. The work that no one saw. The work that would eventually become impossible to ignore. The consultation at Riverside Wellness Center happened on a Tuesday morning when the city was still shaking off rain from the night before. The building was modern, all glass and clean lines, tucked into a neighborhood that straddled the line between gentrified and authentic Portland. I arrived 15 minutes early because I always arrived 15 minutes early now, a habit born from years of being late because I'd underestimated how long everything took when you were carrying an extra 200 pounds. Tanya met me in the lobby. She was shorter than I'd imagined from her voice on the phone, maybe 5'3", with dark curly hair pulled into a loose bun and glasses that kept sliding down her nose. She shook my hand with genuine warmth, not the performative enthusiasm some health professionals used when they were trying to convince you they cared. We have a full assessment planned, but I want to start by just talking. Tell me about your journey so far. Not the numbers. The why. We sat in her office, a small room with plants on every available surface and certificates on the wall that told me she'd gone to good schools and knew what she was talking about. I told her about the mailbox. About standing at the end of my driveway one afternoon last spring, out of breath from a 30-foot walk, realizing that I was 31 years old and already living like I was 70. I told her about the photo I'd taken that next morning. About the first week of meal prep when everything tasted bland because I was so used to salt and sugar and fat that actual food seemed boring. About the morning I ran a full mile without stopping and sat on a park bench afterward and cried because I hadn't thought I'd ever be able to do that again. I didn't tell her about Thanksgiving dinner. Not yet. Some wounds were too fresh to examine in front of strangers, even kind ones. Tanya listened without interrupting, without looking at her watch or her computer screen. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. You know what I hear in everything you just said? She paused. I hear someone who's done the hardest part already. You've changed your identity. Most people come in here trying to lose weight. You came in here having already decided to be healthy. There's a difference. She pulled up something on her computer and turned the screen toward me. This is what we're studying. Long-term outcomes for people who approach health as a lifestyle rather than a project. The data is pretty clear. Quick fixes don't work. 30-day challenges don't work. Even 12-week programs rarely create lasting change. But people who shift their entire relationship with food and movement, who see it as a practice rather than a punishment, those are the ones who succeed. And by succeed, I don't just mean lose weight. I mean build lives they actually want to live. The assessment took 3 hours. Blood work. Body composition analysis. Metabolic testing. A lengthy questionnaire about my eating patterns, sleep habits, stress levels, medical history. Tanya introduced me to Keith from the fitness team, not the Keith from my gym but a different Keith, which made me smile because apparently every gym in America employed someone named Keith. This Keith was younger, maybe late 20s, with the kind of energy that came from genuinely loving what he did rather than just being good at it. He took me through a functional movement screening. Squats and lunges and reaches and rotations, all while he watched how my body moved and took notes on a tablet. "Your mobility is actually really good," he said, sounding surprised. "A lot of people who've carried significant weight for years have compensation patterns that limit their range of motion. But you've clearly been working on this." I told him about the YouTube videos I'd watched. The stretching routines I'd incorporated. The way I'd learned to listen to my body instead of just pushing through pain. He nodded enthusiastically. "That's going to serve you well as you continue losing weight. The lighter you get, the more your body will be capable of. But only if you've maintained the foundation. Which you have." We spent another hour going over exercise programming. He asked what I enjoyed, which was a question I wasn't used to. Most fitness advice assumed you needed to suffer to see results. But Keith believed in finding movement that felt good. If you hate running, don't run. If you love swimming, swim. The best exercise is the one you'll actually do consistently. I told him I liked running even though I was slow. I liked the rhythm of it. The meditative quality of putting one foot in front of the other and just breathing. He didn't tell me I needed to get faster or train for races or have specific performance goals. He just said, "Then keep running. Maybe we add some hill work to build strength. Maybe we incorporate some interval training to improve your cardiovascular capacity. But the foundation is that you enjoy it. Everything else is just refinement." By the time I left Riverside Wellness Center that afternoon, I had a folder full of information. A customized meal plan that was really just a framework, guidelines rather than rules. A training schedule that built progressively over 12 weeks. A calendar of follow-up appointments. Contact information for the entire team. And something I hadn't expected, a sense of being seen. Not as a number on a scale or a before photo or a problem to solve. But as a person doing something difficult with intention and intelligence. I sat in my car in the parking lot and called Dr. Hayes. He answered on the second ring. "Natalie. How did it go?" I took a breath. "It went really well. Thank you for connecting me with them." I could hear the smile in his voice. "I had a feeling you'd be a good fit. Tanya called me after your assessment. She's impressed." I laughed a little. I didn't do anything impressive. I just showed up. "That's the impressive part," he said. "Most people don't." The weeks that followed developed a rhythm that became as natural as breathing. Wake at 5:15. Drink a full glass of water before anything else. Change into running clothes that I laid out the night before. Drive to Willow Creek Park as the sky shifted from black to gray to that pale blue that meant morning was coming whether you were ready or not. Run 3 miles, then 4, then 5 as my endurance built. Come home. Shower. Make breakfast. Work. Gym. Meal prep. Sleep. Repeat. It sounds monotonous when I describe it like that. And maybe it was. But there was something profoundly comforting about the predictability. About knowing exactly what I needed to do and then doing it. No drama. No debate. No negotiating with myself about whether today was the day I deserved a break or could make an exception. The routine removed decision fatigue. It made discipline easier than I'd ever thought possible. 3 months into the Riverside program, I hit 50 pounds lost. The number showed up on the scale one morning in February, and I stood there in my bathroom staring at it like it might disappear if I blinked. 337 pounds. I'd weighed over 300 pounds since my mid-20s. For so long, it had felt like a permanent condition. Like some people were tall and some people were short, and I was just someone who would always be over 300 pounds. But here I was. Under that threshold. Proof that permanence was just a story I'd told myself. Tanya scheduled a celebration appointment, which seemed unnecessary until I showed up and realized what she meant. The whole team was there. Keith the trainer. Dr. Hayes. 2 other participants in the program I'd met in passing. A nutritionist named Simone who'd helped me figure out how to maintain my plant-based approach while ensuring I got enough protein. They'd gotten a cake, which made me laugh because of course they had. It was small and probably didn't fit any of our meal plans, but the gesture mattered more than the calories. 50 pounds is incredible, Tanya said, and everyone agreed, but then she said something that stuck with me. But what's more incredible is that you're still here. Most people quit by now. They hit a plateau, or they have a bad week, or life gets complicated, and they just stop. You haven't stopped. That's the real achievement. I cut a small slice of cake and ate it slowly, savoring not just the sugar and frosting but the moment. The recognition. The community of people who understood that this journey wasn't about perfection. It was about persistence. My phone had remained silent since Thanksgiving. No calls from Vanessa. No texts from my parents. No messages from Aunt Carol or any of the extended family who'd witnessed my exit from that dinner table. Part of me had expected someone to reach out eventually. A half-hearted apology or at least a check-in to see if I was alive. But there was nothing. And after the first month of checking my phone compulsively, I'd stopped expecting anything. It hurt less than I thought it would. Or maybe it hurt differently. Not the sharp pain of fresh betrayal but the dull ache of confirmed suspicions. They'd shown me who they were and what they valued, and it wasn't me. Not the real me. Only the version that made them comfortable. The version that didn't challenge them by changing. The version that stayed small even as I got smaller. I couldn't be that version anymore. I wouldn't be. Spring arrived with the kind of aggressive optimism Portland was known for. Cherry blossoms and daffodils and sudden stretches of sunshine that made everyone forget the 6 months of gray that preceded them. I bought new running clothes because my old ones were falling off. Not expensive stuff. Just basics from the outlet store. But they fit properly. They didn't chafe or ride up or restrict my movement. Such a small thing. Such a massive difference. One morning in April, I was running through Willow Creek Park when I saw a woman struggling. She was heavy, probably around where I'd started, trying to jog but clearly in distress. Red-faced. Breathing hard. Looking like she was on the verge of giving up. I slowed as I approached her. She glanced at me with that mixture of embarrassment and defiance I recognized from my own experience. I smiled. "You're doing great. Keep going." She nodded, too out of breath to respond, but I saw something shift in her expression. Not gratitude exactly. More like relief. Like someone had given her permission to continue being imperfect. I kept running, but the encounter stayed with me. That's what I'd needed 6 months ago. Not judgment or advice or someone telling me there was an easier way. Just acknowledgement that the work was hard and I was doing it anyway. That had value independent of the outcome. By summer, I'd lost 75 pounds. 312 on the scale. Halfway to my goal of losing 150. My body was changing in ways that weren't just about size. I had energy that lasted all day instead of crashing by mid-afternoon. I slept better. My knees stopped hurting. I could cross my legs. I fit comfortably in restaurant booths. I bought clothes from regular stores instead of specialty plus-size shops. Each of these things seemed trivial until they weren't. Until they accumulated into a life that felt fundamentally different. Tanya suggested I consider sharing my journey publicly. Not for attention, she clarified, but because representation matters. There aren't enough stories of people doing this sustainably. Doing it slowly. Doing it without products to sell or quick fixes to promote. Your approach could help someone. I was resistant at first. The idea of posting progress photos or writing about my experience felt too vulnerable. Too exposing. But I thought about the woman in the park. About how much a simple encouraging word had meant to me when I was starting. About how isolated I'd felt doing this alone. I created an account. Not under my real name. Just a pseudonym that gave me some distance. I posted the photo from my bathroom last June. Then a current photo. The difference was stark. Not just in my body but in my face. In my eyes. The before photo showed someone defeated. The after photo showed someone who'd remembered how to fight. I wrote a simple caption. 6 months. 75 pounds. No pills. No programs. Just consistent choices over time. If you're starting this journey, you're not alone. I expected maybe a few likes from strangers. What I got was an avalanche. Comments from people who'd struggled with the same things. Questions about my methods. Messages from women who said they'd needed to see this. That every transformation they'd seen was all or nothing. All in intensity or complete failure. No one showed the middle path. The sustainable path. The path that acknowledged that life continued happening even while you were trying to change it. I started posting more regularly. Not every day. I wasn't trying to become an influencer. But once or twice a week, I'd share something real. A meal I'd prepped. A run I'd struggled through. A moment I'd wanted to quit but didn't. The honesty resonated in a way polished content never did. People were tired of perfection. They wanted proof that imperfect efforts still counted. That you could have bad days and still be moving forward. That progress wasn't linear but it was real if you didn't give up. By fall, I was down 100 pounds. 287 pounds on the scale. Firmly into the 200s for the first time since college. I bought new running shoes because I'd worn through my old ones. The guy at the specialty store looked at my worn treads and grinned. You've been putting in work. How many miles you think you've logged on these? I did some quick math in my head. Probably around 800. His eyebrows went up. That's serious. You training for something? I shook my head. Just training to be healthy. He fit me for new shoes, the same model as before because they'd worked well. As he was ringing me up, he said, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I see a lot of people come through here with big goals and new gear. Most of them I never see again. But you, I can tell you're in it for real. I thanked him and left with my new shoes and that small validation that meant more than it should have. That I was becoming recognizable. Not as someone trying to change but as someone who had. The Riverside team scheduled a comprehensive reassessment at the 1-year mark. All the same tests I'd done initially but with dramatically different results. My blood pressure had normalized. My cholesterol levels had dropped into healthy ranges. My resting heart rate was 60 beats per minute, down from 94. My body fat percentage had decreased significantly while maintaining muscle mass. Every objective measure said I was healthier than I'd been in over a decade. But the number that hit hardest was on a questionnaire Tanya had me fill out. Rate your overall quality of life on a scale of 1 to 10. A year ago, I'd written 3. This time, I wrote 8. She looked at my response and then at me. What would it take to make it a 10? I thought about it. Honestly? Nothing specific. Just time. Just continuing to show up. The 8 isn't because something's missing. It's because I know I'm still becoming. There's more ahead. That's exciting, not disappointing. She smiled and made a note on her tablet. That's exactly the mindset we're studying. People who see health as an ongoing practice rather than a destination. You're a perfect case study for everything we're trying to prove. I felt a swell of something in my chest. Pride maybe. Or just the satisfaction of knowing I'd done what I said I would do. That I'd shown up every day for a year even when it was hard. Even when no one was watching. Even when my own family had written me off as delusional. My online presence had grown steadily. Not viral. Not explosive. But organic and real. I had a few thousand people following my journey now. Mostly women. Mostly people who'd struggled with weight for years and were tired of being sold solutions that didn't work. I posted about hitting the 100-pound milestone. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of comments. Dozens of messages. Women sharing their own stories. Thanking me for showing them it was possible. One message stood out. It was from someone named Carla. She'd sent a long paragraph about how she'd been 350 pounds for 5 years. How she'd tried every diet and failed every time. How she'd given up until she found my account 3 months ago. She'd started walking. Just walking. 10 minutes a day at first. Now she was up to 30 minutes and had lost 20 pounds. Your posts remind me I don't have to be perfect, she wrote. I just have to keep going. Thank you for that. I read her message 3 times. This was why Tanya had encouraged me to share. Not for attention or validation, but because visibility created possibility. Because someone who'd never seen themselves reflected in transformation stories finally could. Because representation wasn't just about seeing success. It was about seeing struggle. Seeing setbacks. Seeing the messy middle part that everyone edited out of their highlight reels. That's what people needed. Not inspiration porn. Not before and after photos with no context. But the truth of what it actually took to change your entire life one decision at a time. Winter came again. 1 year since Thanksgiving dinner. 1 year since I'd walked out of my parents' house and spent the night in a motel wondering what came next. I thought about calling them. Reaching out to show them the progress I'd made. Part of me wanted their acknowledgement. Their apology. Their admission that they'd been wrong about me. But a wiser part, the part that had grown strong over 12 months of choosing myself, knew better. Their validation wouldn't feel like I hoped. It would come with conditions. With expectations. With the same dynamics that had made me invisible in the first place. I spent Thanksgiving alone in my apartment. I cooked a full meal, all foods that aligned with how I ate now. Roasted vegetables. Baked tofu with herbs. Sweet potato mash. Cranberry sauce I'd made with less sugar. It was delicious. It was exactly what I wanted. And I ate it in peace without anyone commenting on my portions or questioning my choices or making me feel like I had to justify taking care of myself. That peace was worth more than any family gathering. December brought unexpected cold. Ice on the roads. Snow that actually stuck, which rarely happened in Portland. I adjusted my routine but didn't abandon it. Treadmill runs instead of outdoor when conditions were unsafe. Home workouts when I couldn't get to the gym. Flexibility without capitulation. That had become my mantra. Adapt but don't quit. Life would always provide reasons to stop. Weather. Illness. Stress. Schedule changes. The discipline wasn't in perfect conditions. It was an imperfect follow-through. On Christmas morning, I woke up and did something I'd been avoiding. I took out the photo from June of last year. The one from my bathroom. 387 pounds of exhaustion staring back at the camera. I looked at it for a long time. Not with shame anymore. Not with disgust. With compassion. That woman had been struggling. That woman had been in pain. That woman had felt hopeless and alone and like nothing would ever change. But that woman had also been brave enough to take the first step. To face the truth. To start when she had no evidence it would work. I took a current photo in the same bathroom. Same mirror. Same lighting. 273 pounds. 114 pounds difference. The physical transformation was obvious. But what struck me more was everything you couldn't see in a photo. The confidence. The energy. The sense of capability. The knowledge that I could set goals and achieve them through nothing more complicated than persistent effort. That woman in the before photo had given me a gift. She'd shown me what rock bottom looked like so I'd never have to go back there. I owed her everything. I posted both photos side by side with a simple caption. 18 months. This is what happens when you decide you're worth the effort. No magic. No shortcuts. Just showing up every single day even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. The post went viral. Not in the traditional sense. I didn't have millions of followers or get featured on news sites. But within my community, it resonated. It was shared hundreds of times. People commented saying they'd saved it as motivation. That they'd shown it to their doctors or their therapists or their partners who didn't believe change was possible without surgery or medication. The attention was uncomfortable at first. I'd gotten used to my small corner of the internet where I could be honest without too much scrutiny. But the exposure brought something unexpected. Opportunities. A local gym reached out asking if I'd be interested in leading a beginners running group. A nutritionist asked if I'd speak on a panel about sustainable weight loss. A podcaster wanted to interview me about my journey. Each offer felt surreal. A year and a half ago, I'd been eating alone in a motel room wondering if anyone would ever see me as more than my weight. Now people were asking for my perspective. My experience. My voice. I said yes to the running group. It started small. 6 women who'd seen my posts and wanted to learn how to start running without injuring themselves or giving up after a week. We met Saturday mornings at Willow Creek Park, the same place I'd been training for over a year. I taught them what I'd learned. Start slower than you think you need to. Walk when you need to. The goal isn't speed. It's consistency. Celebrate every small victory because they add up to something massive if you give them time. One woman in the group, Patricia, reminded me of myself 18 months ago. She was around 300 pounds, self-conscious about being seen in public exercising, convinced she was too heavy to run. I told her the same thing Keith had told me. You're not too heavy to start. You're at the perfect weight to begin. We worked on building her base. Walking intervals. Then short jogs. Then longer efforts. By the end of 8 weeks, she ran a full mile without stopping and cried at the finish line. I understood those tears. They weren't about the mile. They were about proving to yourself that you were capable of more than you'd believed. The panel discussion was harder. It was at a wellness conference downtown, and I was terrified standing backstage waiting to go on. The other panelists were all professionals. Nutritionists with degrees. Personal trainers with certifications. A psychologist specializing in behavior change. And me. Someone who just figured it out through trial and error and stubbornness. But when I sat down and they started asking questions, I realized my perspective was exactly why I'd been invited. I wasn't selling anything. I wasn't promoting a method or a program. I was just telling the truth about what had worked for me. Someone in the audience raised their hand during the Q&A session. How do you deal with people who don't support you? Family members who undermine your efforts? I felt my throat tighten. I took a breath before answering. You accept that they might never understand. You accept that their lack of support says more about them than about you. And you build your own support system. You find people who get it. Who celebrate your wins. Who don't need you to stay small so they can feel better about themselves. It's painful to outgrow people you love. But it's more painful to shrink yourself to fit into their expectations. The room was quiet after I said that. Then someone started clapping. Then more people joined. The moderator thanked me and moved to the next question, but I saw heads nodding throughout the audience. I'd said something that needed to be said. Something that wasn't in any textbook or training manual but was absolutely true. Sometimes the hardest part of transformation wasn't the physical work. It was accepting that not everyone would come with you. That some people preferred who you used to be because it was comfortable for them. That choosing yourself meant disappointing others. That it was worth it anyway. After the panel, several people approached me. Handed me business cards. Said they'd love to talk more. One woman, maybe in her 50s, squeezed my hand. My daughter needs to hear what you said today. She's been struggling for years, and her husband keeps sabotaging her efforts. Can I give her your information? I wrote down my social media handle on the back of a receipt I found in my purse. Tell her I'm not an expert. But I'm someone who's been there. Sometimes that's more valuable. The podcast interview happened a few weeks later. It was recorded remotely, just me sitting in my apartment with headphones on talking to a host I'd never met face to face. She asked good questions. Not about what I ate or how much I exercised, though we covered that. But about the mental and emotional work. About how I'd changed my relationship with food. About learning to see exercise as something I did for my body rather than to my body. About the grief of realizing your family might never understand you. About the freedom that came from accepting that. The episode went live in February, exactly 2 years after I'd hit my first 50-pound milestone. By then, I was down 130 pounds. 257 pounds on the scale. Closing in on my original goal of losing 150. But something had shifted in how I thought about goals. The number mattered less than the life I was building. I could hike now. Really hike. I'd done an 8-mile trail the previous weekend with elevation gain that would have been impossible a year ago. I could play with kids at the park without getting winded. I could shop in any store. I could exist in the world without constantly worrying about whether I'd fit or be judged or be seen as lazy or undisciplined. Those were the real transformations. The scale was just data. The life was everything. I posted a photo from that 8-mile hike. Sweaty and tired and grinning at the summit. The caption read, 2 years ago I got winded walking to my mailbox. Yesterday I climbed 1,500 feet of elevation. Your body is capable of amazing things if you give it time and consistent effort. Don't underestimate yourself. The post got thousands of likes. But more importantly, it got comments from people saying they'd just signed up for their first 5K or joined a gym or simply walked around their block for the first time in months. That's when I understood something fundamental. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to everyone who saw themselves in it. Everyone who'd been told they couldn't. Everyone who'd internalized that message and needed proof it was wrong. I had a responsibility to keep showing up. To keep being honest. To keep demonstrating that sustainable change was possible even when it wasn't easy. Especially when it wasn't easy. March brought the 2-year mark since Thanksgiving dinner. Since the night in the motel. Since I'd decided that I'd rather be alone and committed to myself than surrounded by people who needed me to fail so they could feel better about their own choices. I thought about them sometimes. Vanessa and Richard and Diane and Aunt Carol. Wondered if they ever thought about me. If they'd seen any of my posts or heard through mutual connections about what I'd accomplished. If they felt any regret about that dinner. About what they'd said. About how easily they dismissed my efforts. Probably not. People rarely examined their own behavior that honestly. It was easier to believe I'd been wrong and they'd been right. That I'd gotten lucky or done something extreme or would eventually fail and prove them correct. That's what people did when your success challenged their narrative. They dismissed it. Diminished it. Found ways to explain it that didn't require them to question themselves. I didn't need their acknowledgement anymore. That was the real victory. Not the weight loss. Not the physical transformation. The internal certainty that I was worth fighting for regardless of who agreed. Spring arrived again with that same aggressive optimism. 2 years of springs. 2 years of seasons cycling through while I put one foot in front of the other and refused to quit. The running group had grown. We had 15 regulars now. A mix of abilities and body types and goals. Some wanted to lose weight. Some just wanted to feel stronger. Some were running from trauma or grief or lives that had gotten away from them. We ran together Saturday mornings and supported each other and proved every week that you didn't have to be fast or thin or naturally athletic to be a runner. You just had to run. Patricia, who'd cried after her first mile 2 years ago, was training for a half marathon. She'd lost 60 pounds and gained a confidence that radiated from her. She told me once, "You saved my life." I corrected her gently. "You saved your own life. I just showed you it was possible." She shook her head. That's what saving someone's life looks like sometimes. Showing them they can save themselves. I thought about that conversation a lot. About Coach Parker and how he'd done the same for me in high school. About Dr. Hayes connecting me with Riverside. About Tanya believing in my approach. About every small moment when someone had seen my potential and reflected it back until I could see it myself. That's what community meant. Not people who did the work for you. But people who witnessed your work and said, "Keep going." People who celebrated your wins and reminded you they mattered. People who didn't need you to be perfect. Just persistent. I'd built that community deliberately over 2 years. Online and offline. A network of people who understood that transformation was hard and messy and worth it. Who didn't judge setbacks as failures but as part of the process. Who showed up for each other not with advice but with presence. By summer, I'd hit 150 pounds lost. 237 pounds on the scale. The goal I'd set 2.5 years ago in a bathroom that smelled like defeat. I'd reached it. Not in 6 months like Vanessa had predicted would fail. Not through any shortcut or surgery or medication. Just through showing up every single day and making choices that aligned with who I wanted to become. The number on the scale felt anticlimactic. I'd thought hitting that goal would feel like fireworks and celebration and vindication. Instead, it just felt like another morning. Another data point. Another proof that consistent effort over time created results even when each individual day felt unremarkable. I posted about it but kept the caption simple. 150 pounds lost. 2.5 years. 912 days of choosing myself. The comments poured in. Congratulations. You're an inspiration. How did you do it? That last question always made me smile. They wanted a formula. A trick. A secret that would make it easy. But there wasn't one. There was just the decision to start. The commitment to continue. The discipline to show up even on days when motivation was nowhere to be found. That wasn't sexy or marketable. But it was true. Tanya scheduled another assessment. The team at Riverside was compiling their research, and I was one of their star case studies. Someone who'd lost significant weight without surgery. Who'd maintained muscle mass and bone density. Who'd improved every health marker. Who showed no signs of the metabolic adaptation that usually made long-term weight loss impossible. Who'd sustained the effort for years rather than months. I was an anomaly in a world of yo-yo dieting and quick-fix failures. Proof that the slow way was actually the fast way if you measured success by sustainability rather than speed. During the assessment, Tanya asked a question she'd never asked before. "What's next for you, Natalie?" I thought about it. I'd hit my goal. I could maintain here. Keep doing what I was doing. Live the healthy life I'd built. That would be enough. More than enough. But I realized I didn't want to stop. Not because I needed to lose more weight. I was healthy here. But because I discovered something I loved. The process. The growth. The sense of capability that came from setting goals and achieving them. I want to keep pushing, I told her. See what else my body can do. Maybe train for a marathon. Not to prove anything. Just to see if I can. She smiled. That's the best motivation there is. The marathon training started in August. I'd never considered myself someone who could run 26.2 miles. The idea felt absurd even after everything I'd accomplished. But Keith, my trainer from Riverside, mapped out a 16-week program that built gradually. Start with a 10-mile long run and add a mile each week. Incorporate speed work. Practice fueling strategies. Learn to listen to your body's signals before they became injuries. Trust the process. The first long run was humbling. 10 miles sounded manageable until I was 8 miles in and my legs felt like concrete. I walked the last half mile, which felt like failure even though Keith had specifically told me that walking was part of training. Your body doesn't know the difference between running and walking. It just knows forward motion and effort. Don't let ego convince you that slowing down is quitting. I texted him after, discouraged. He responded immediately. You went 10 miles. A year ago, 3 miles felt impossible. Perspective matters. He was right. I'd gotten so focused on the next goal that I'd forgotten to acknowledge how far I'd already come. That night, I pulled out my journal and made a list. Every single thing I could do now that I couldn't do 3 years ago. Run 10 miles. Climb stairs without holding the railing. Sit comfortably in airplane seats. Shop in regular stores. Sleep through the night without back pain. Play with my neighbor's kids without getting winded. Hike mountain trails. Exist in my body without constant discomfort. The list filled 2 pages. Reading it back made my eyes water. Not from sadness. From gratitude. The training consumed my fall. Long runs on Saturdays that stretched from 10 to 15 to 18 miles. Tempo runs on Tuesdays. Easy recovery runs on Thursdays. Strength training 3 days a week to prevent injury. Meal planning became even more critical because I was burning significantly more calories and needed to fuel properly. I learned about carb loading and electrolyte balance and the difference between bonking and just being tired. Running a marathon wasn't just about having strong legs. It was about understanding your entire system and how to support it through extreme demands. My online community followed along. I posted about the good runs and the terrible ones. The morning I ran 16 miles and felt invincible. The morning I barely finished 12 and questioned every decision that had led me to sign up for this race. The honesty resonated. People were tired of highlight reels that made everything look easy. They wanted to see the struggle. The doubt. The moments when even someone who'd lost 150 pounds and completely transformed their life still had days when they wanted to quit. One comment stuck with me. It was from a woman named Lauren who'd been following my journey for over a year. Watching you train for this marathon is giving me permission to try things I've always thought I wasn't allowed to do because of my size. I've wanted to take a dance class for years but convinced myself I'd be laughed at. Seeing you struggle and keep going anyway makes me think maybe I can too. Thank you for being imperfect in public. I read that comment 3 times. Being imperfect in public. That's exactly what I was doing. Not because I wanted attention or sympathy. But because perfection was a lie that kept people from starting. If I could show that transformation was possible even through setbacks and bad days and moments of doubt, maybe someone else would give themselves permission to begin. October brought a shift I hadn't anticipated. Vanessa posted something on her social media. It wasn't about me directly, but it might as well have been. There's a dangerous trend of people promoting extreme weight loss through restrictive diets and obsessive exercise. Remember that health comes in all sizes and weight loss isn't necessary for wellness. Love yourself as you are. The post had thousands of likes. Hundreds of comments agreeing. Praising her for promoting body positivity and self-acceptance. I stared at my phone feeling a complicated knot of emotions. Part of me wanted to respond. To point out the irony of her posting this after spending years telling me I needed to change. After building a career on selling fitness products and meal plans and supplements that promised transformation. After mocking my approach as extreme and obsessive when really she just couldn't stand that I'd succeeded without her guidance or approval. But engaging would give her exactly what she wanted. Drama. attention. Proof that I was still thinking about her. Instead, I posted my own message. Health looks different for everyone. For some people, that means accepting their body as it is. For others, it means changing their body through sustainable lifestyle shifts. Both are valid. What's not valid is telling someone else what their health journey should look like. You don't know what someone's experiencing in their body. You don't know their pain or limitations or goals. Support people in whatever path makes them feel strong and capable. That's what real body positivity looks like. The post went more viral than anything I'd shared before. People tagged Vanessa in the comments even though I hadn't mentioned her name. They called out the hypocrisy of fitness influencers who promoted weight loss until it was their own family member succeeding, then suddenly pivoted to anti-diet rhetoric. Some accused me of fat phobia for losing weight at all. Others defended my right to make choices about my own body. The whole thing became a messy debate I hadn't intended to start. Tanya called me that evening. I saw the post and the response. "How are you doing with all this?" I sighed. Honestly, I'm tired. I didn't lose weight to make a statement. I did it because I was in pain and wanted my life back. But somehow it became political. Like my body is a battleground for other people's ideologies. She made a sympathetic sound. That's what happens when you become visible. People project their own stuff onto your story. The best thing you can do is stay grounded in your truth. You know why you did this. That's all that matters. She was right, but it didn't make the scrutiny easier. I turned off comments on that post and took a break from social media for a week. Focused on training. On the marathon that was now just 6 weeks away. On the tangible, physical reality of my body moving through space rather than the digital chaos of everyone's opinions about it. The break helped. By the time I logged back in, the conversation had moved on to something else. The internet's attention span was mercifully short. November arrived cold and wet. Marathon month. The race was scheduled for the last Sunday, which gave me one final long run 2 weeks out. 20 miles through Portland in 38-degree rain. Every mile felt like a negotiation between my brain, which wanted to stop, and my body, which was capable of continuing. Around mile 16, I started crying. Not from pain or exhaustion. From the sheer overwhelming reality of what I was doing. 3 years ago, I couldn't walk to my mailbox. Now I was running 20 miles in the rain by choice. The transformation wasn't just physical. It was existential. I finished that run and immediately got in a hot shower, standing under the water until it ran lukewarm. My legs ached. My feet were covered in blisters despite my expensive socks and carefully fitted shoes. I was exhausted in a way that went beyond tired. But I'd done it. 20 miles. The longest distance I'd ever covered. Proof that marathon day was possible even if it wouldn't be easy. Keith texted during my shower. His messages always had impeccable timing. That was the hard part. Race day will feel easier because of the adrenaline and crowd and taper. Trust your training. You've put in the work. The 2 weeks between that run and race day were strange. The taper meant less mileage, which should have felt like a relief but instead made me anxious. I'd gotten so used to high-volume training that pulling back felt wrong. Like I was losing fitness rather than letting my body recover and prepare. Keith assured me this was normal. Every marathoner goes through taper madness. You'll feel sluggish and weird and convinced you've forgotten how to run. Then race day comes and your legs remember everything. Just trust it. I picked up my race packet on Friday. The expo was overwhelming. Thousands of runners browsing vendor booths and picking up their bibs and timing chips. I felt out of place surrounded by people who looked like lifelong athletes. Lean and muscular and comfortable in their bodies in ways I still wasn't entirely. But when I got my bib, number 8472, and held it in my hands, something shifted. I was here. I belonged here. Not because of how I looked but because I'd done the training. Because I'd earned this start line through months of early mornings and long runs and pushing through discomfort. Saturday I barely left my apartment. Laid out my race outfit. Checked and rechecked my gear. Made my pre-race breakfast, oatmeal with banana and almond butter that I'd practiced eating during training runs. Set 6 alarms because I didn't trust myself to wake up on time even though I'd been waking at 5 a.m. for 3 years. Tried to sleep but mostly stared at the ceiling thinking about 26.2 miles and everything that could go wrong. Around midnight, I finally dozed off, my phone on the nightstand showing Coach Parker's stopwatch as my last conscious image. Race morning felt surreal. Cold and dark and electric with nervous energy from thousands of runners converging on the start line. I found my corral, seated based on my estimated finish time of 5 hours. Not fast by competitive standards, but respectable for someone who'd started this journey unable to run a mile. The national anthem played. The announcer gave instructions about course marshals and aid stations and what to do in case of emergency. Then the starting gun fired, and we were moving. The first few miles were chaos. Too many people. Too much excitement. Too fast a pace because everyone around me was surging with adrenaline. I forced myself to slow down, to stick to my planned pace even when it meant people passed me. This was a marathon, not a sprint. The first 6 miles didn't matter if I couldn't finish the last 6. Around mile 8, I settled into a rhythm. My breathing steadied. My legs found their cadence. The crowds lining the street cheered for everyone, not just the fast runners. A little kid held up a sign that read, "You're running faster than my Wi-Fi." I laughed out loud, which felt impossible while running but happened anyway. Mile 13 came faster than I expected. Halfway. I took a gel at the aid station, the gross sweet concentrated carbs that fueled endurance athletes. Drank water. Kept moving. My legs felt good. Not fresh, but strong. Capable. Around mile 16, I started seeing other runners struggling. Walking. Stretching out cramps. Looking like they were questioning all their life choices. I understood that feeling. I'd been there on every long training run. But today, I felt steady. Prepared. Like all those hard miles in the rain and cold and exhaustion had built something resilient. Mile 20 was where it got real. The wall that marathoners talked about. The point where your glycogen stores depleted and your body started burning whatever fuel it could find. My pace slowed slightly. My breathing got harder. But I didn't stop. I thought about the woman in the bathroom photo 3 years ago. About the motel room. About Thanksgiving dinner and Vanessa's voice saying I was killing myself. About every person who doubted that sustainable change was possible. About every morning I'd woken up and chosen to keep going even when I didn't want to. All of that had led here. To mile 20 of a marathon I'd once thought was impossible. The finish line appeared around a final turn at mile 26. 0.2 miles to go. The longest, shortest distance. My eyes burned. My legs screamed. But I ran. I didn't sprint because I couldn't. But I ran steadily, consistently, all the way across that timing mat while the announcer called my name and bib number. Natalie Brooks, number 8472, you are a marathoner. I stopped running and immediately started crying. Not sad tears. Not even happy tears exactly. Just release. The physical and emotional accumulation of 3 years pouring out in that moment of completion. A volunteer draped a foil blanket over my shoulders and handed me a medal. Another volunteer guided me toward the finishers area where they had bananas and bagels and chocolate milk. I sat on the curb, medal around my neck, and pulled out my phone. My official time, 4 hours 52 minutes. Under my goal of 5 hours. I'd done it. Not just finished. Actually run well. I took a selfie, sweaty and exhausted and wearing that medal, and posted it with a simple caption. 3 years ago I couldn't walk to my mailbox without losing my breath. Today I ran 26. 2 miles. Never underestimate what you're capable of. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of likes. Hundreds of comments. Messages from people I'd never met saying they'd been following my journey and crying reading about my finish. From runners who understood what this achievement meant. From non-runners who saw it as proof that transformation was possible if you gave it enough time and consistent effort. The validation felt good but not necessary. I'd done this for myself. The medal was real regardless of who witnessed it. Keith called while I was still sitting on that curb. "I've been tracking you all morning. That was an incredible race, Natalie. Negative split on the back half. Perfect pacing. You ran that like a veteran." I laughed, which hurt my exhausted abs. I definitely don't feel like a veteran. I feel like I got hit by a truck. He laughed too. That's marathoning. The pain is temporary. The pride is permanent. Rest up. You've earned it. I spent the rest of the day horizontal on my couch, legs elevated, eating everything I wanted because I'd burned over 3,000 calories and my body needed fuel. Pizza and ice cream and bread without weighing a single gram. One day wouldn't undo 3 years of sustainable habits. That's what I'd learned. Balance wasn't about perfection. It was about the overall pattern. Monday morning, I could barely walk down my apartment stairs. Every muscle hurt in ways I didn't know were possible. But it was good pain. Earned pain. The kind that came from pushing yourself to new limits and discovering you were stronger than you knew. I took the week off from running, did gentle yoga and stretching, let my body recover. By Friday, I was itching to move again. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to. That was the real transformation. Exercise had shifted from obligation to desire. From something I did to my body to something I did for it. The marathon medal hung on my wall next to Coach Parker's stopwatch. 2 symbols of the journey. One representing where I'd started, the person who'd believed in me before I believed in myself. The other representing where I'd arrived, proof that his faith had been justified. I posted a photo of both items with a longer caption than usual. This stopwatch belonged to my high school coach who told me I had something rare, persistence. He died 4 years ago and never saw what I became. But everything I've accomplished traces back to him seeing potential in an overweight, slow teenager who refused to quit. And this medal represents 3 years of honoring that potential. Of proving that persistence matters more than talent or genetics or any excuse we tell ourselves about why we can't. If you're at the beginning of your journey, know this, the person you're becoming is worth every hard day. Keep going. That post resonated differently than others. It wasn't about weight loss or running. It was about mentorship and belief and how the people who see us when we can't see ourselves plant seeds that bloom years later. Comments poured in about people's coaches and teachers and family members who'd believed in them. About how that belief had sustained them through difficult transformations. About wanting to be that person for someone else. Community wasn't just about shared struggle. It was about shared humanity. About witnessing each other's growth and saying, yes, you can, even when the evidence wasn't yet visible. December brought opportunities one hadn't anticipated. A local sportswear company reached out asking if I'd be interested in testing their products and providing feedback. Nothing major, just free gear in exchange for honest reviews. I said yes because I genuinely needed new workout clothes and my budget was tight. They sent a box of leggings and sports bras and running tops, all in my current size. Wearing clothes designed for athletes when I still sometimes saw myself as someone pretending to be athletic felt strange. But they fit. They worked. I ran in them and posted honest feedback about what I liked and what could be improved. The company loved my reviews. They asked if I'd be interested in a more formal partnership. Becoming a brand ambassador. Posting regularly about their products. Attending events. I told them I wasn't an influencer and didn't want to become one. I had a small following of real people, not an audience I'd bought or manipulated through algorithms. If that was valuable to them, great. If not, I understood. They said that's exactly why they wanted to work with me. Authenticity was rare in the fitness space. Everyone was selling something. I was just living my life and documenting it honestly. That was more powerful than any polished campaign. We agreed on a modest partnership. A few $100s a month plus free products. Not enough to quit my day job, but enough to offset my gym membership and race entry fees. It felt surreal. Being paid, even a small amount, for something that had started as a desperate attempt to save my own life. But I approached it the same way I'd approached everything else. With integrity. I only posted about products I actually used and liked. I was honest about what didn't work. I made it clear when posts were sponsored. My followers appreciated the transparency. My engagement actually increased because people trusted that I wasn't just selling them whatever paid me. January marked 3 years since I'd started this journey. 3 years since that bathroom photo and the decision to change. I'd lost 175 pounds total, reaching a weight I hadn't seen since high school. 212 pounds on a 5'10" frame. Solidly in the healthy BMI range, though I'd learned that BMI was just one metric among many. My body fat percentage was healthy. My muscle mass was strong. My cardiovascular fitness was excellent. My blood work was perfect. Every objective measure said I was healthy, which was the actual goal all along. But more than the numbers, I had a life I loved. I hiked every weekend. I ran marathons. I led a community of women who were finding their own strength. I had partnerships with brands that valued my voice. I had savings in my bank account for the first time in my adult life. I had energy and mobility and the simple joy of existing in a body that did what I asked it to do. That was worth more than any number on a scale or size on a tag. That was freedom. I posted a 3-year transformation photo. The bathroom mirror shot from January 3 years ago next to a current photo in the same spot. The physical difference was dramatic. But I wrote about the invisible changes. The confidence. The discipline. The knowledge that I could set audacious goals and achieve them through nothing more magical than consistent effort over time. The belief that I was worth fighting for. That my comfort and health and happiness mattered regardless of what anyone else thought. Those were the real transformations. The weight loss was just evidence of the internal shifts that had happened first. The post went viral in a way nothing else had. It was shared across platforms. Featured on fitness blogs and wellness sites. Someone sent it to a producer at a local news station who reached out asking if I'd be interested in being interviewed for a segment on sustainable weight loss. I almost said no. The idea of being on television felt exposing in ways I wasn't comfortable with. But I thought about Carla and Lauren and Patricia and all the women who'd messaged me saying my story had helped them start their own journeys. If going on TV meant reaching more people who needed to hear that slow, sustainable change was possible, maybe it was worth the discomfort. The interview aired on a Thursday morning in February. They came to Willow Creek Park and filmed me running. Interviewed me at the gym. Sat in my apartment and asked about my meal prep routine. The segment was only 4 minutes, which meant they edited out most of what I'd said, but the core message remained. Weight loss didn't require surgery or medication or extreme measures. It required a fundamental shift in how you related to food and movement. It required patience. It required showing up consistently even when results weren't immediately visible. It required treating yourself like someone worth caring for. After the segment aired, my social media exploded. I gained 5,000 followers in a day. My inbox filled with messages and interview requests and partnership opportunities. A literary agent reached out asking if I'd ever considered writing a book. A podcast network wanted to discuss hosting my own show. A supplement company offered me $10,000 for a single sponsored post. The attention was overwhelming. I'd gone from anonymous to somewhat visible, and the shift happened faster than I could process. Tanya helped me navigate it. She'd seen this happen with other people in their research program who'd had successful transformations and gotten media attention. The key is staying grounded in why you started, she told me over coffee at her office. You didn't do this to become famous or make money. You did it because you wanted your life back. Don't let the opportunities change that. Say yes to things that align with your values. Say no to everything else. Your integrity is worth more than any paycheck. I said no to the supplement company. Their products contained ingredients I didn't believe in, and I wasn't going to promote something I wouldn't use just for money. I said no to most of the interview requests because they wanted sound bites and drama, not substance. But I said yes to the literary agent. The idea of writing a book, of telling the full story in a way that might help people understand the real work of transformation, felt aligned with why I'd started sharing publicly in the first place. Not for attention. For connection. For proof that ordinary people could do extraordinary things if they gave themselves permission and time. March brought an unexpected email. The subject line read, Nike Athlete Sponsorship Opportunity. I almost deleted it thinking it was spam. Nike didn't sponsor people like me. They sponsored elite athletes. Olympians. Professionals. Not former data entry clerks who'd learned to run through YouTube videos and stubbornness. But something made me open it. The email was from a woman named Jennifer Lawrence, no relation to the actress, who worked in Nike's grassroots marketing division. They were launching a new campaign focused on real athletes with compelling stories. People who embodied their just do it ethos not through winning medals but through showing up consistently. Someone had sent them my story, and they wanted to talk. I read the email 3 times convinced I was misunderstanding. Then I read it again. They wanted to fly me to their headquarters in Oregon, which was convenient since I already lived in Portland. They wanted to hear my story in person. They were considering me for a multi-year sponsorship deal as part of their Real Stories campaign. The compensation would be significant. Life-changing significant. But they wanted to meet first. Make sure there was alignment between my values and their brand. Make sure I was someone they wanted representing them. I called Tanya immediately. She answered on the first ring. I just got the strangest email. I think Nike wants to sponsor me. There was a pause. Then she laughed, not mockingly but with genuine delight. Natalie, that's incredible. And honestly, not that surprising. You've built something real. You've inspired thousands of people. You're exactly the kind of story big brands are looking for right now. Authentic. Relatable. Proof that their products work for regular people, not just elite athletes. I stared at my phone after we hung up. 3 years ago, I'd been sitting in a motel room with $42 and no idea what came next. Now Nike wanted to meet with me. The trajectory of a life could change so completely if you just refused to give up. If you just kept moving forward even when the destination wasn't visible. If you just trusted that consistent effort over time created opportunities you couldn't imagine when you started. The meeting was scheduled for early April. I had 3 weeks to prepare, which mostly meant trying not to freak out and overthinking everything. I ran every morning like always. Went to the gym like always. Led my Saturday running group like always. Maintained my routine because that's what had gotten me here. Consistency. Discipline. Showing up regardless of external circumstances. The routine wasn't just preparation for a meeting. It was who I'd become. The meeting itself would just be an extension of that identity rather than something separate from it. The Nike headquarters looked like a college campus designed by someone who actually understood athletes. Sprawling green spaces. Running trails winding between buildings. People in athletic wear moving with purpose between meetings. I arrived 30 minutes early because anxiety made me chronically punctual, and sat in my car doing breathing exercises Keith had taught me for managing pre-race nerves. This wasn't a race, but my heart rate suggested otherwise. Jennifer met me in the lobby. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, wearing Nike gear that probably cost more than my rent but somehow made her look approachable rather than intimidating. She shook my hand firmly and smiled like she was genuinely happy I'd come. Thanks for making the trip. I know this probably feels surreal. I laughed nervously. That's an understatement. 3 years ago I was sleeping in a motel room wondering if I'd ever get my life together. Now I'm at Nike headquarters. She nodded thoughtfully. That's exactly why we wanted to meet you. Your story isn't about always having it together. It's about figuring it out as you went. That's what resonates. We walked through hallways lined with photos of athletes I recognized from commercials and magazine covers. Runners and basketball players and soccer stars who defined excellence in their sports. I felt profoundly out of place until Jennifer led me into a conference room where 3 other people waited. She introduced them. Marcus from Brand Partnerships. Elena from their digital marketing team. And Tom, a photographer who'd worked on several major campaigns. They all greeted me warmly, and we sat around a table that had bottles of water and a fruit platter I was too nervous to touch. Marcus started the conversation. We've been following your journey for about 6 months now. One of our team members has been in your running group and kept telling us we needed to pay attention to what you were building. The authenticity is rare in the fitness space. Everything feels manufactured and filtered. But your content, your story, it's raw and real, and that's what people are hungry for right now. Elena jumped in. We're launching a campaign called Real Stories, Real Strength. It's about everyday athletes who've overcome something significant. Who embody our brand values not through winning but through perseverance. We think you'd be perfect for it. I took a sip of water to buy myself a moment. What would it involve exactly? Tom pulled out a tablet and showed me mock-ups. Photo shoots featuring you running, training, living your life. Video content documenting your routine. Social media campaigns where you share your journey with our branding. Appearances at select events and races. We're not asking you to be someone you're not. We want to showcase exactly who you are. Marcus added, and compensate you fairly for it. We're talking about a 3-year contract. $12 million total. $4 million per year. The number hit me like a physical force. I set down my water bottle carefully because my hands had started shaking. I'm sorry, did you say 12 million? Elena smiled. We did. You've built something valuable, Natalie. A community that trusts you. An audience that sees themselves in your story. That has worth. Real, measurable worth. And we want to partner with you to amplify that message while making sure you're taken care of financially. You shouldn't have to work a data entry job when you're inspiring thousands of people to change their lives. I sat there trying to process what was happening. $12 million. More money than I'd make in 10 lifetimes at my current job. More money than I'd ever imagined having. Enough to never worry about rent or bills or whether I could afford good running shoes. Enough to expand my running group into something bigger. Enough to create the kind of stability I'd never had. But also enough to fundamentally change my life in ways I wasn't sure I was ready for. This is overwhelming, I said honestly. In the best way, but overwhelming. Can I think about it? Marcus nodded. Absolutely. Take a week. Talk to a lawyer, review the contract thoroughly. We want you to feel completely comfortable with this decision. Jennifer stood and gestured toward the door. Let me show you around campus while you're here. Sometimes seeing the environment helps with the decision. We spent the next hour walking through facilities that felt like a temple to human performance. State-of-the-art training centers. Biomechanics labs. Recovery spaces with ice baths and massage tables. A cafeteria that offered meticulously balanced meals designed by nutritionists. Athletes at every level training alongside each other, from high schoolers on development tracks to professionals preparing for Olympic trials. Jennifer introduced me to a few people. A marathoner who'd set an American record. A track coach who'd trained multiple gold medalists. A physiotherapist who worked with injured athletes helping them come back stronger. Everyone was kind and welcoming, treating me like I belonged there even though I felt like an imposter. On our way back to the main building, Jennifer said something that shifted my perspective. You keep looking around like you don't deserve to be here. But you do. You've done something most of these athletes never had to do. You've completely rebuilt yourself from scratch. That takes a different kind of strength. Don't underestimate it. I drove home in a daze. $12 million. The phrase kept repeating in my head like a mantra or a prayer, or maybe just disbelief trying to process reality. I called Tanya before I even got back to my apartment. She answered immediately. How did it go? I pulled into a parking lot because I couldn't drive and have this conversation simultaneously. They offered me $12 million over 3 years. The line went silent. Then she said quietly, "Holy shit. That's life-changing money, Natalie." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm terrified. What if I say yes and everything changes? What if the attention ruins what I've built? What if I'm not actually good enough for this and I embarrass myself on a massive scale?" Tanya took a breath. "Those are all valid fears. But here's what I know about you. You've stayed grounded through every milestone. When you got media attention, you didn't let it change your routine or your values. When brands wanted to sponsor you, you only said yes to things that aligned with who you are. You have a strong center. Trust that. And if it helps, remember that you can always say no. You don't need this money. You're fine without it. So the question isn't whether you need it. It's whether you want it. Whether this opportunity excites you or just scares you." I sat with that question for 3 days. Read the contract they'd sent over. Hired a lawyer to review it, which felt absurdly adult and professional. The contract was straightforward. They'd pay me $4 million per year for 3 years in exchange for a certain number of content posts, appearances at events, and use of my image in their campaigns. I'd have creative control over my content and approval over how they used my story. I could terminate the contract if they did anything that violated my values. It was as good as these things got, my lawyer said. They're not trying to own you. They're trying to partner with you. There's a difference. On the 4th day, I went for a long run at Willow Creek Park. 10 miles through familiar trails while I thought about what this decision meant. The money was obviously appealing. But what mattered more was the platform. If I said yes, I'd have resources to reach more people. To expand the running group. To create programs for people who couldn't afford gym memberships or nutritionists or the support systems that had helped me succeed. I could hire help. Build something sustainable. Turn the community I'd accidentally created into something intentional and impactful. By mile 8, I knew what my answer would be. I finished the run and drove straight home. Showered. Made coffee. Called Jennifer while I was still in my bathrobe with wet hair because waiting felt impossible now that I'd decided. She answered on the 2nd ring. "Natalie. Have you had time to think?" I took a breath. "I have. And I want to do this." I heard her smile through the phone. "That's fantastic. We're so excited to work with you. I'll send over the paperwork today. Welcome to the Nike family." After we hung up, I sat on my couch and cried. Not from fear or overwhelm, though both were present. From gratitude. From the sheer improbability of a path that had started with being unable to walk to my mailbox and somehow led here. To a $12 million contract with one of the biggest brands in the world. To proof that your life could change completely if you just refused to quit. If you just kept showing up day after day even when no one was watching. Even when success seemed impossible. Even when your own family told you that you were delusional. The contract signing happened 2 weeks later at their headquarters. More papers than I'd ever seen with my name on them. Lawyers on both sides making sure every detail was correct. Jennifer and Marcus and Elena all present, along with several executives I hadn't met before. After the last signature, Marcus shook my hand. "We're going to do great things together." "I believe that." I smiled, still not quite believing this was real. "I hope I live up to your expectations." Elena laughed. "Just be yourself. That's literally all we're asking. That's what makes this work." The announcement went public 3 days later. Nike posted on all their platforms. A photo of me running through Willow Creek Park, sunlight filtering through trees, sweat on my face, genuine smile. The caption told an abbreviated version of my story. 3 years ago, Natalie Brooks couldn't walk to her mailbox without losing her breath. Today, she's a marathoner and an inspiration to thousands. We're proud to welcome her to the Nike family. Her journey proves that the only person you need to be faster than is the person you were yesterday. The post got millions of views within hours. My phone became unusable with notifications. My social media followers jumped from 15,000 to over 100,000 in a single day. News outlets picked up the story. Local stations wanted interviews. National morning shows reached out. The attention was intense and immediate and completely overwhelming. I turned off my phone and went for a run because that's what I always did when life felt chaotic. When I got back, there were 47 missed calls. Texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Emails filling my inbox faster than I could read them. And one voicemail that made my stomach drop when I saw the name. Vanessa. I stared at her name for a full minute before I pressed play. Her voice was carefully modulated, that fake casual tone she used when she wanted something but was pretending not to. Hey Nat, long time. I saw the Nike thing. That's amazing. Really. I'm happy for you. I was thinking maybe we could get together and talk. Catch up. There's been a lot of misunderstanding between us and I'd love to clear the air. I'm sure you're busy with all this new success, but family should be there for each other, right? Call me back when you can. Love you. I deleted the voicemail immediately. But the damage was done. After almost 3 years of silence, she reached out not to apologize or make amends, but because I'd become valuable. Because my success could now benefit her. Because she wanted to be associated with me after spending years treating me like I was an embarrassment. My phone rang again. This time it was my mother, Diane. I let it go to voicemail too. Then my father. Then Aunt Carol. All within 20 minutes of each other. They'd coordinated this. Seen the Nike announcement and decided together that now was the time to reconnect. Not when I'd lost 50 pounds and was struggling. Not when I'd hit 100 pounds and needed support. Not when I'd run my first marathon and could have used family there at the finish line. Now. When there was money and attention and reflected glory they could claim. I didn't call any of them back. Instead, I texted Tanya. They're calling. All of them. She responded immediately. Of course they are. You knew this would happen eventually. Do you want to talk about it? I did. We met at a coffee shop near the Riverside Wellness Center the next morning. I told her about the voicemails. About Vanessa's fake sweetness and my mother's carefully worded message about family obligations and my father's gruff declaration that we should let bygones be bygones. About how none of them had acknowledged what they'd said 3 years ago. The damage they'd done. The pain they'd caused. They just wanted to skip past all of that straight to reconciliation now that reconciliation benefited them. Tanya listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked, "What do you want to do?" I thought about it. Part of me wanted to call them back. To finally have the confrontation I'd never gotten. To make them acknowledge what they'd done and apologize properly. But a wiser part knew that wouldn't happen. They'd rewrite history. Tell me I was being too sensitive. Insist they'd always supported me. Gaslight me into questioning my own memory of events. That's what they'd always done. Why would this time be different? I don't think I want to do anything, I said. I think silence is the answer. They had 3 years to reach out. 3 years to apologize. They chose not to. I'm not going to reward that now just because circumstances have changed. Tanya nodded. That's valid. You don't owe them a relationship just because you share DNA. Family is supposed to support you when it's hard, not show up only when it's convenient. But be prepared for them to escalate. When people like that don't get what they want, they often get ugly. She was right. Over the next week, the calls continued. The voicemails became less friendly and more entitled. My mother left a message saying I was being selfish and hurtful by ignoring them. My father said I'd always been difficult and this proved I hadn't changed as much as I thought. Vanessa posted a cryptic message on social media about people who forget where they came from when they get a little success. The hypocrisy was stunning, but not surprising. I blocked all their numbers. Blocked them on social media. Told my lawyer to draft a cease and desist letter if they tried to contact me through other channels. It felt harsh, but necessary. I'd spent 3 years building a life without them. A life where I wasn't constantly defending my choices or explaining my worth. I wasn't going to let them back in just because they'd decided I was valuable now. The boundaries I'd set by walking out of that Thanksgiving dinner had protected me. I wasn't going to drop them now. The Nike campaign launched in June. Billboards in major cities featuring my face and that photo from Willow Creek Park. The tagline read, "She didn't quit on herself." Television commercials showing my morning routine. Meal prep. Early runs. Gym sessions. Voiceover narration telling my story in 30-second and 60-second versions that somehow captured the essence without losing the truth. The response was massive. People resonated with the message that transformation was possible through consistency rather than perfection. That you didn't need to be elite to be an athlete. That showing up mattered more than talent. Sales of Nike products in my size range increased significantly. Women who'd never seen themselves represented in athletic campaigns suddenly had someone who looked like they did, who'd struggled like they had, wearing the swoosh and saying you can do this too. The campaign worked not because it was manipulative but because it was honest. Because I was still me. Still posting about bad runs and meal prep failures and days when I didn't want to go to the gym but did anyway. The sponsorship hadn't changed that. If anything, it had given me more resources to be authentic at scale. My running group grew from 15 to 50 to over 100. We had to split into multiple pace groups to accommodate everyone. I hired 2 assistant coaches to help manage the growth. We formalized everything, created a website, set up a nonprofit structure so we could offer scholarships for people who couldn't afford race entry fees or proper running shoes. The Nike money made all of that possible. I wasn't just changing my own life anymore. I was creating infrastructure for other people to change theirs. That felt more meaningful than any dollar amount. In August, Nike flew me to New York for a major campaign event. A panel discussion at their flagship store about sustainable fitness and long-term health. I was terrified speaking in front of hundreds of people, but I told the truth. About the motel room and the $42 and the morning I couldn't walk to my mailbox. About the slow, unglamorous work of change. About the loneliness of outgrowing people who needed you to stay small. About the joy of discovering what your body could do if you treated it with respect instead of punishment. The audience listened quietly. Some people cried. Many people applauded. Afterward, dozens of people waited in line to talk to me. To thank me. To share their own stories. One woman, probably in her 60s, gripped my hand and said, "I haven't exercised in 20 years because I thought I was too old and too heavy. But watching your journey made me realize it's not too late. I joined a walking group last month. I'm down 15 pounds and I feel like I have my life back. Thank you for showing me it was possible." That conversation stayed with me for weeks. This was why the Nike partnership mattered. Not the money, though that was nice. Not the recognition, though that was validating. But the reach. The ability to show people that change was possible even when everything in their life suggested it wasn't. September brought another marathon. This time in Chicago. Nike flew me there first class, put me up in a nice hotel, gave me a VIP race experience. It was surreal compared to my first marathon where I'd driven myself and stayed at a budget motel and felt lucky to have enough money for the entry fee. But the race itself was the same. 26.2 miles. The same struggle around mile 20. The same determination to finish. The same tears crossing the finish line. Money and sponsorships changed logistics. They didn't change the fundamental challenge of asking your body to do something extraordinary and trusting it to respond. I finished in 4 hours 37 minutes. 15 minutes faster than my first marathon. Proof that I was still improving, still getting stronger. The Nike film crew documented everything. The nervous energy at the start line. The struggle in the middle miles. The triumph at the finish. They interviewed me immediately after, and I was too exhausted and emotional to filter my words. "This never gets easy," I said, breathing hard. "But it gets more familiar. You learn to trust that your body will carry you through if you've done the training. That's the lesson. Not just about running. About everything. Put in the work consistently and trust the process." The interview clip went viral. It was used in several subsequent Nike campaigns. Featured in presentations about authentic marketing. Analyzed in business school case studies as an example of brand partnerships done right. October brought an unexpected complication. A tabloid published an article about my family. They'd somehow gotten interviews with Vanessa and my parents. The headline read, "Nike star's family speaks out about her transformation gone too far." The article was full of misquotes and manipulated narratives. Vanessa claiming she'd always supported me but worried about my extreme methods. My mother saying she'd tried to maintain contact but I'd pushed them away. My father insisting they were proud of me but concerned about how fame had changed me. All lies. All designed to paint them as caring family members and me as ungrateful and difficult. I called Jennifer immediately. She'd already seen it. "I'm so sorry, Natalie. We deal with this sometimes with our athletes. Family members or former friends trying to cash in on success. We can issue a statement if you want. Counter their narrative." I thought about it. Part of me wanted to fight back. To tell the truth about what they'd actually said and done. But that would just give the story oxygen. Keep it in the news cycle. Give them the attention they wanted. What if I just ignore it? I asked. Let it die naturally? Jennifer was quiet for a moment. That's actually probably the smartest approach. Engaging gives them power. Silence takes it away. Most people will forget about this in a week. Your real community knows the truth. They're the ones who matter. She was right. The article made a splash for a few days. But my followers, the people who'd been with me through the actual journey, defended me without being asked. They posted comments about the timeline. About how my family had been absent for years. About how convenient it was that they only spoke up now that there was money involved. The narrative fell apart under scrutiny. Within a week, the tabloid moved on to some other celebrity drama. My family's attempt to insert themselves into my success had failed. The relief was profound. Not just because the immediate crisis passed, but because I'd handled it without compromising my boundaries. I hadn't let them back in. I hadn't given them the confrontation or attention or reconciliation they wanted. I'd simply continued living my life, and that turned out to be the most powerful response. November marked 3 years since that Thanksgiving dinner. 3 years since I'd walked out and never looked back. I thought about posting something acknowledging the anniversary, but decided against it. That dinner didn't define me anymore. It was just a moment in a much longer story. The real story wasn't about what my family had done. It was about what I'd built despite them. The life I'd created. The community I'd fostered. The opportunities I'd earned through nothing more complicated than refusing to quit. That was worth celebrating without needing to reference the darkness it had grown from. Instead, I posted a photo of my running group. 100 women of different ages and sizes and abilities, all wearing Nike gear I'd been able to provide through the partnership. The caption read, 3 years ago I was alone in every way that mattered. Today I'm surrounded by strong women who show up for themselves and each other. This is what transformation looks like. Not just a body changing, but a life expanding. Grateful for every person who's been part of this journey. The post got hundreds of thousands of likes. But more importantly, it got comments from women in the photo talking about what the group meant to them. How it had changed their relationship with exercise. How it had given them community and accountability and proof that they were capable of more than they'd believed. December brought the end of year one with Nike. We'd exceeded every metric they'd measured. Engagement. Sales. Brand sentiment. They were thrilled. I was exhausted but fulfilled. The year had been a whirlwind of photo shoots and events and interviews and content creation on top of maintaining my actual training routine and running the group and trying to have something resembling a normal life. It was a lot. But it was good. It was purposeful. It was exactly what I'd said yes to. As the year wound down, I took some time off. Reduced my running to easy maintenance miles. Skipped the gym more than I had in 3 years. Slept in. Cooked elaborate meals just for myself. Read books that had nothing to do with fitness or nutrition or personal development. Remembered that rest was part of training. That recovery was when growth actually happened. That you couldn't sustain intensity indefinitely without burning out. On New Year's Eve, I sat in my apartment alone by choice. I'd had invitations to parties and events. Nike had offered to fly me to a celebrity-filled celebration in Los Angeles. But I wanted to be here. In the space I'd built. With the life I'd created. In silence that felt peaceful rather than lonely. I pulled out my journal and wrote about the year. About everything that had happened since I'd signed that contract. About the surreal experience of seeing my face on billboards. About the family drama and how I'd handled it. About the responsibility of representing so many people who saw themselves in my story. But mostly I wrote about gratitude. For a body that had carried me through 4 marathons and hundreds of training runs. For a mind that had stayed strong through doubt and criticism and fear. For the random chance of Coach Parker believing in me 15 years ago and planting a seed that had bloomed into this entire life. For the discipline I'd built one small choice at a time. For the community that had formed around shared struggle and mutual support. For second chances and new beginnings and proof that it was never too late to become who you were meant to be. The year ahead would bring its own challenges. Year 2 of the Nike contract. New campaigns. More visibility. Higher expectations. But I'd learned something crucial over the past 3 years. I didn't need to know the whole path to take the next step. I just needed to show up tomorrow. And the day after that. And the day after that. One foot in front of the other. The same way I'd gotten here. The same way I'd keep going. The phone rang at 6 in the morning on a Tuesday in March. 17 missed calls before I finally woke up and answered. It was Jennifer from Nike. "Natalie, have you seen the news?" Her voice had an edge I'd never heard before. I sat up, heart pounding. "What news?" "Turn on your television. Any major network. They're all covering it." I fumbled for the remote. Every channel showed the same image. Vanessa, sitting on a morning show couch, tears streaming down her face, talking about how I'd abandoned my family after they'd supported me through my weight loss journey. How the Nike money had changed me. How she was speaking out now because she loved me and wanted me to come home. The host nodded sympathetically while the children read, Nike athlete accused of abandoning family who supported her transformation. My hands shook. Every word was a lie. Every tear was performance. But millions of people were watching, and they didn't know the truth. They just saw a distraught sister worried about her sibling who'd gotten famous and left everyone behind. Jennifer's voice came through the phone. "We're already drafting a response. But Natalie, we need your permission to release the full story. The real timeline. What actually happened at that Thanksgiving dinner. The voicemails they left. Everything." I thought about Coach Parker. About the stopwatch and the lesson about persistence. About how sometimes winning meant not engaging. But I also thought about the 100 women in my running group. About the thousands of people following my journey who deserved to know the truth. About not letting lies become the official record. "Do it," I said. "Release everything. I'm done protecting people who never protected me." Nike's statement went out within 2 hours. A detailed timeline with receipts. Screenshots of the voicemails from after the Nike announcement. Documentation that my family had been silent for 3 years until money was involved. Testimony from Tanya and Keith and members of my running group about the work I'd actually done and the support I'd actually received. The narrative flipped immediately. By afternoon, Vanessa's interview was being analyzed as a calculated attempt at manipulation. Social media turned on her. Her followers called her out. Brands dropped sponsorships. The morning show issued an apology for not fact-checking before giving her a platform. My parents released a statement saying they'd been misquoted, which no one believed. The whole thing collapsed under the weight of documented truth. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. Tired of having to defend my choices. Tired of people who should have loved me trying to profit from my pain. Tired of the circus that came with visibility. But I also felt clear. The truth was out now. Not my version against theirs. Just facts. Timeline. Evidence. The kind of proof that didn't require anyone to take sides because the reality spoke for itself. That evening, I went for a run at Willow Creek Park. The same trails I'd been running for 3 years. The same path where this whole journey had really begun. My pace was easy, not trying to prove anything or run from anything. Just moving through space, feeling my body respond, grateful for legs that carried me and lungs that worked and a heart that kept beating through everything. Around mile 3, I saw her. The woman I'd encouraged years ago when she was struggling. She was running steadily now, comfortable in her stride, wearing Nike gear. She recognized me and smiled. "Thank you," she called out as we passed. "For everything." I nodded, too emotional to speak. That's what mattered. Not the drama or the money or the fame. The real impact. The lives changed. The women who'd found their strength because I'd been willing to share my struggle publicly. When I got home, there was an email from someone I didn't know. The subject line read, "From Coach Parker's daughter." My breath caught. I opened it with shaking hands. The message was brief. "My father passed away 4 years ago, but he kept a journal about his students. I found an entry about you from your sophomore year. He wrote, Natalie Brooks is going to do something extraordinary. She doesn't know it yet, but I do. She has the rarest gift, the ability to get back up. I thought you should know that he believed in you before you believed in yourself. That he would be proud of who you became." I read the email 3 times. Then I looked at the stopwatch on my wall. The medal from my first marathon. The Nike contract that had changed my financial life but not my fundamental character. The journal where I still wrote every day about small victories and persistent effort. All of it traced back to a teacher who'd seen something in an overweight, slow teenager that no one else had noticed. Who'd given her permission to keep trying even when success seemed impossible. I pulled out my phone and recorded a video. No filter. No makeup. Just me in my apartment after a run, hair messy, face flushed. I talked directly to the camera. 3.5 years ago, my family told me I was ruining my life by changing how I ate and exercised. They mocked my efforts. Dismissed my progress. Told me I was being extreme and obsessive. When I walked away from that toxicity, they didn't reach out once. Not for 3 years. Then Nike happened, and suddenly they wanted a relationship. When I maintained my boundaries, they went on television and lied. Today, the truth came out. But that's not why I'm making this video. I held up the stopwatch. This belonged to my high school coach who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. He died before he could see what I became, but his faith sustained me through every hard moment. If you're at the beginning of your journey, find someone who believes in you. Or be that person for yourself. And if people in your life try to make you small so they can feel big, you have permission to walk away. You have permission to choose yourself. You have permission to build a life on your own terms even if that disappoints people who never supported you anyway. Your transformation doesn't require anyone's approval. Just your commitment. I posted the video and turned off my phone. Made dinner. Stretched. Journaled. Went to bed early because tomorrow I had a run scheduled and a life to live and a community to serve. The drama would fade. It always did. But the work would continue. The showing up. The persistence. The same qualities Coach Parker had seen all those years ago. The qualities that had brought me from a motel room with $42 to a life I'd built through nothing more magical than refusing to quit. That was the real story. Not the Nike contract or the family drama or any external validation. Just the internal certainty that I was worth fighting for. That I always had been. That anyone who'd made me feel otherwise had been wrong. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.